Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. Join your host, her inner circle, and expert guests weekly for chats about dating, secure attachment, the solo lifestyle, doing relationships differently, and of course, sex. And here's your host, Janice Formicella.
All right, let's go for it. What is Tantra exactly? How do people practice it? How can it improve your relationships? How can it improve your relationship with yourself? And what does it mean to live an ecstatic life? Welcome to Sex and the Solo Girl. We're talking about Tantra today. And one of my friends and fellow practitioners is here. Welcome back, Gina Catherine.
Thank you so much, Janice. I love being here in your space.
Yeah, I love doing this podcast, and I'm just going for it as far as juicy topics go. But admittedly, also just things that I want to talk about that aren't quite as appropriate for podcasts about breakups. And if you're going through a breakup, go check out Breakups, Broken Hearts, and Moving On. Before we start, what is your podcast? Everybody go and follow. Remember that when you follow a podcast, that's really the best thing that you can do for us as far as the algorithm goes. So where can people go and listen to more of your wisdom?
Yeah, thank you. So my podcast is called The One Podcast with Gina Catherine, and it's everywhere. I started off as strictly a dating from self-love podcast. I won a little award in the first year for most inspirational. That was so much fun. And then I faded and I started to go a little bit deeper. I had my own, as we do, dark night of the soul. And so I was quiet for a little while. And then I came back just after having asked a lot of people about why they listen and who they are. It wasn't really a dating focused following. And so I just sort of opened it wide up, talking a lot more about intimacy with self, intimacy in sexual practices with Tantra, and all of my learnings and how all of that rolls into exactly what you said, how can we live a blissful, ecstatic life? And so it's really—
I call it a desired life is what I teach people, and definitely how I live. I mean, this is a lifestyle for sure.
Yeah. And I think that that's what brought you to me. I don't know you in real life. I know you from being in peripheral circles and me listening to your podcast, you listening to me talk. And I think we came together at exactly this divine timing, because we jumped on this path at the same time. And so thank you for inviting me.
You're welcome. I'm really glad that we did more fully cross paths recently, because I just love connecting with other women with goddess energy. So this is great. I mean, really, not everybody has it, and not everybody prioritizes it either. And so I love having people in my circle who get me this way.
Yeah. And I will say that it's a learned thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, okay. You probably agree with this too, because you know a lot about attachment style and everything too. First, we had it. It's our original essence. Then we unlearned it. We got it conditioned or beaten or ignored out of us. And then we relearn how to come back home to ourselves. And I try to do that every day. And I find that when I come off the path, it's because I haven't been practicing this. And so this goddess energy is not something that Janice just has or Gina just has. It's something that we pay attention to, that we focus, we make a priority.
And Tantra is a lot about intentionally doing these things. And I will say I've really come into it only in the past 3 years, as far as just being completely comfortable and present with my body. And that allows the feminine to come out. And along those lines, I did some rituals this morning getting ready for this. You're going to love this. I went and bought myself flowers. Flowers are a big part of my life. And I thought that'll make me feel extra juicy. And I took a nice shower, and I put after shower oils on, which everybody go and buy some for yourself. They're really nice. If you get a good one, it smells nice. It feels great on your skin, but it doesn't make you greasy or oily. And it's very, very juicy. So we're going to talk more about living a tantric life. Before we do, though, what are we talking about? Part of my frustration when I first started being curious about Tantra is I would ask people who not claim, people who consider themselves practitioners, what it is, what is the practice. There was something that called to me about it. And in fact, I even remember going and I think having drinks with this woman in my community in Melbourne who said she practiced Tantra. She had a business. She had like Tantra classes, Tantra dance sessions. And I went and met with her. And she's a really, really lovely woman, but she could not tell me what it was, how exactly it showed up in her life. So I've got, believe it or not, a WebMD definition, which I have to say, I was going around, I just wanted a clear definition. And WebMD was the first thing that came up. And I'm like, right on. Do you want to give your definition of it first? And then maybe I'll read a tiny bit of this.
Oh, let's hear the WebMD.
Okay, super. Tantra is an ancient Indian practice that dates back more than 5,000 years. In Sanskrit, the word Tantra means woven together. People who practice Buddhist and Hindu meditation may also practice Tantra sex as a way to weave the physical and the spiritual. This practice brings together spirituality and sexuality and emphasizes the importance of intimacy during a sexual experience. However, Tantra isn't just about sexual pleasure. It's more about celebrating your body and feeling heightened sensuality. The practice intertwines spirituality, sexuality, and a state of mindfulness. And you have no idea how good it could get. It encourages a sensual experience that may be experienced alone or with a partner. The goal of tantric sex is to achieve spiritual or energetic contact during a sensual experience. The practice is slow, and the aim is not always to achieve orgasm. Let's definitely touch on that. Instead, it's about feeling a connection either to your partner or to yourself that's both intense and enlightened. It includes breathing, sounds, and movements that activate sexual energy. I think that's good in a nutshell. Are they missing anything, or would you like to add anything?
Oh, for sure. Okay, WebMD.
Okay, lay it on.
I think it's interesting. Yeah. So for the first thing I want to say is like I think I'm going to back up to what you said about the woman who you met, who you found it hard to pin down, like what is Tantra? And so Tantra is so unique and so individual. And so, like, if the flowers that you just showed me, if you were to say to me, what do these flowers bring up for you? What do they make you feel? What can you describe the color? Can you describe the scent? So all of these sensuality practices or descriptions, that is Tantra. And it is so uniquely individual to each person that it is hard to describe. And I find that people who really are deep into Tantra, it is hard to describe, right?
Okay.
Because it's describing this actual feeling that is unique to everyone. And that is the practice, and the intention is to bring us home to our original essence, which is so unique to everyone. And so I would say that WebMD got some of those right, but in trying to explain this limitless feeling and potential, you said it better in your exclamation of like, you have no idea how good it gets.
Oh,
so
yeah.
like your interjection, Janice, was actually, I think, better than the WebMD description, because you're trying to explain magic. You're trying to explain expansion. And so one of the ways that I've thought, like if you were to ask me, give one word for Tantra, it would probably be, for me, truth.
Oh, wow. That's not what I
And
thought you were going to say at all.
right. And the reason I say truth is because Tantra teaches that there is no good or bad, or there is no part of us that is not acceptable. There is no part of us that is not divine. The shorter version for my definition of Tantra would be total divine love, acceptance, and the practices that bring us to that truth that is ourself. The truth is we are multidimensional. This is about looking into the darkest regions of ourselves and finding a place, finding love for that.
So I'm sure that a lot of people are going to listen to this coming with some preconceived notions or ideas about what Tantra is. I will touch on probably the biggest myth, but what do you think maybe be a misgiving or a myth about maybe how it's practiced?
Oh, what do I think is the biggest myth? Well, I think there are two pieces, right? One is that it's like the dark web or the dark religion, or that it's like Kali or something like that is too witchy, too dark, too goth, right? And the other is that it's only always about sex or about pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And so the biggest myth, I think, in talking about tantric sex is, well, first of all, that tantra is only about sex, but that tantra is not about pleasure. When you practice tantric sex, you're actually lifting pleasure and orgasm out of that so that the focus is not on pleasure, but about spirituality and connection.
Thank you. And I will jump in right there and say my first text that I'm studying is called The Art of Sexual Ecstasy. It's by Margot Anand. And everyone, I am in chapter 6, which is 163 pages into the book. And we have not started going into pretty much anything sexual yet. It's been about meditation. One of my favorite parts was creating a sacred space, which I did do and am continuing to do with my partner. I loved that. Breathing, breath work, connection with your partner on various levels, dance, the concepts of the masculine and feminine. So if you think that this is all about sex, she is going to get into it. I am sure of it. As far as myths around Tantra, though, I will definitely say there is a myth that it only means, or that a big part of it is either delayed orgasm for men or avoiding ejaculatory endings or goals, shall we say, to sex. And there are communities of men who definitely do work to avoid ejaculation, but that's not an essential part to this. This is one way that some people choose to practice this. So if you're thinking it's all about training yourself not to climax, it's not that. Edging can add to it a lot, and I think that that's part of a lot of people's practice, but not ejaculating at all is not.
Yeah, I agree that the goal there, I think that those are tools that we use to move sexual energy. So Tantra is a lot about energy, right? So we're talking about energy work. We're talking about the chakra wheels, and we're talking about this flow. I think that when we talk about practices like edging or non-ejaculatory orgasm or climax, we're talking about tools to get closer to the divine in us, right? And because in Western culture, we tend to chase orgasm or climax.
Yes.
And so those are actually useful tools and practices. If that's your end goal, you can just practice edging on your own. Sexual energy is very intoxicating, it's very powerful, and learning how to use that sexual energy to get other things, right? So to get more creativity. But the energy is really what we're talking about. I did this practice, Janice, where there was a woman client of mine who is femme, and she was told by somebody else that she needs to get out of her masculine, and that is how she will attract masculine men, is if she gets in touch with her divine feminine. But this was all very confusing for her. And so one of the tantric practices that I used was this visualization of moving this energy from the root, which is this sense of safety, and the feminine energy filling up the left, and the masculine energy. So we're talking about like water and fire, and how we can cross these energies. And if we can visualize them, and then they go all the way up to the core, to the crown, and it creates this steam that cleanses away all of our past hurt, that cleanses away any repression, any sort of barriers to intimacy, and like a steam wash, right? And so we can use this polarity that is already inside of ourselves with the masculine and the feminine energy. That's a very tantric practice that is coming to an idea of fixing ourselves by being too in our, I'm doing air quotes that you can't see. And so like that's a tantric practice that uses energy to create this acceptance and this free flowing feeling. It liberates some of these repressions that are coming. So it's really about energy and how to let that energy flow inside of us so that we can feel liberated and free. When do you fucking have better sex than when you feel liberated and free, right? Like, and so the
And
point,
really in the moment as
yes,
well. Yeah, I've been practicing recently, and yes, definitely liberating, and just having nothing on your mind but the present moment, which I don't think a lot of people really realize what that means or what it can be like. And it is, yeah, I even use that word with my partner, that I feel complete freedom.
Yeah.
We see in the movies a lot, just like bang it out sex, and that can be good. And this is better. So, so why study Tantra? What would, compel somebody to dive into this? Are there issues that it may solve or improve? Are there things that it welcomes into your life? Why do you think people should study Tantra?
Good question. I would say that a lot of people who come to me in coaching report this feeling of stuckness, if that is a word, the feeling of like numbness, of being stuck in their life, of not knowing their purpose, of not feeling connected or belonging. And so I would say studying Tantra can loosen that, can free that stagnation inside of you, right? So like if you're viewing emotions through the tantric lens, you're going to view it as like, let's say that you have some repressed or stuck emotions. We all do. Society, culture tells us anger, shame, guilt, grief, these are not welcome here. And so we stuff them. I'm 56. I could only do that for so long. It calcifies and becomes stagnant, and it cut me off from what real joy feels like, what that creative force feels like. And so Tantra brought me back my feeling of true connection, my feeling of creative flow, my turn on for walking into a cafe and hearing this cacophony of like voices and how it swirls through me and doesn't intimidate me. I was feeling quite anxious. I didn't feel like I could go into public places where maybe I felt really comfortable because I wasn't really sure what was going on with me. So this anxiety and this stuckness and this numbness and confusion, right? And when I started to learn Tantra and loving the darkest parts of myself,
Mm-hmm.
and not ever feeling anymore like there was something under the bed that I couldn't look at, some monster I should be afraid of, because Tantra brought me back to those places. I brought them back up from this sort of underworld, if you will, which is really me. And I thought, oh, I love those pieces of myself. Ah. And what that did is it created this flow state that naturally unstuck me and brought back all of these joys from my sensual world. And so as I slowly was getting shut down, Tantra brought me back to, I would say, a state of vibrancy, a state of magnetic being. And
It is magnetic. And I can say for sure that people can see it in you and not quite put their finger on why, but that you exude confidence and light when you're fully in your body. And I will read a quote from the book. I wasn't sure if I was going to, but we're talking all about your relationship with self and self-love, which is fundamental. You cannot go into Tantra just wanting better sex and wanting only to connect more with your partner. But I do want to talk on what it can do for partners. So Margaret Anand says, as far as the relationship with self, loving yourself means that you realize that you deserve the experience of ecstasy. Loving yourself also means that you are not willing to compromise or settle than less than you really want, especially in sex. Listen to this. Trying to love another when you do not love yourself does not work. You end up feeling possessive, jealous, and dependent. By contrast, when you really begin to love yourself, you become a magnet, attracting the love of others.
yeah.
That's
Oh,
great. And that's where she
okay.
starts. It's all individual practices and concepts that she begins with, because like I said, it's fundamental to ongoing practice of Tantra. It's the only starting point. The only starting point is self-love.
Yeah, I agree. I think that quote is very magical. Like I felt a lot of, and here's what Tantra does to you too, is when you feel touched by this quote that you just gave, you can feel it in your body. And we
Yeah.
haven't talked about that yet, which is this bodily or this embodied resonance with things. Like it's not it. Here's what I would say is that Tantra was the first thing that I could not intellectualize. It was the first thing that like I'll give an example. I used to do endurance sports. I used to do a lot of triathlons and marathons and things. And I would read a book about the practices and then I would do the thing, right? Like, but Tantra, you can't really read. You can be inspired by the reading, but
Mhm.
you have to feel it in your body. You have to do the practices. And it's about coming home to your body and this body mind piece and how powerful that is and how that's not all you, that there is this spiritual element. And I have a little bit different view than you do, which is that
Okay.
I think it's okay to come in just wanting to get off better. I think it's okay
Okay.
to start Tantra by wanting to feel more sensation in your cock or your pussy and then surprise, like surprise, you get this feeling, this awakening. And I do think that the process or the practice, the intention can follow that after they're like, wow, once I'm in this room, I actually feel how much more there is.
And feeling thankful to yourself for accessing it. Does
Yes.
that make sense? Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk about coupled Tantra.
Okay.
That's a big part of it, a really, really big part. So, why would a couple benefit from this or want to explore it together?
Yeah, that's a great question. And just bouncing off of the self-love piece that you just brought up is that relationship is a container where we could feel, I do feel like we need to have self-love to be optimally connected to another person. But I also think that the connection to self can be invited through connection with your partner. And so let's say, for example, there's a tantric position that you can sit in that I teach in my relationship course, which is yab yum, right? So you've probably
Oh,
seen,
I do. I know exactly what you're
yeah,
talking about, and I've done this a lot. But yes, what is yab yum?
yeah. I'll just describe it briefly for your listeners, Janice, which is you're sitting cross-legged, but there's usually one partner's legs are on top of and around the waist of another. So you're kind of like in crisscross, but one partner's legs are around the back. So maybe their feet are around the back. And this can be modified for um, different sizes, different
Ability.
abilities.
It's like
But
straddling each other, sitting face to
yes,
face.
exactly. You're face to face straddling. And so this position in couples, even if you just are in this position, you can cycle energy through your breath up the spine of one, through up the crown, and then down the crown and down the spine of another. And you can cycle this energy in a circular motion. And I have had my clients, only one person knew they were doing it, this cycled energy, and the other person, and they did not speak to the other person about this cycled energy. And the other person said, "What is happening?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's
What is
it's
happening?"
powerful and it's intense.
And it is this flow of energy and this invitation of connection. It's, like in psychology, they might call it co-regulating. They're Tantra, the intersection now between Tantra and neuroscience, like what goes on in our brain when we meditate, what lights up in our brain when we orgasm, what lights up when we feel calmly and deeply connected to our body and then with another person is beautiful.
And what people may describe as spiritual.
Yes.
Mm. As far as what couples get, they'll achieve greater intimacy potentially and more intense, quote unquote, better sex. I mean, is that
Yeah. Well, because I think that more intense and beautiful sex is more connected to this divine. And so even if and I believe that sacred sexuality can be found alone. It's just this connection to self and the divine. And so what the yab yum and what these practices do is, let's say that there are three couples that we're talking about. One are just mad as hell. They are
at each
just
other?
ready to fight. They're ready always to be reactive. They're either ready to cut the other person off, and then the person in the middle is like, "Yeah, we like each other. We get along. We're good. We're good. We're good." Right? And the other is, "We love each other. We feel fantastically attracted. We have for 5 years." And so this varying spectrum, right? The same practice of yab yum, moving this energy through breath while creating this safe space together. The first couple who feels like they're warring, it can soften them just enough. It can crack their heart, de-armor their heart just enough through this cycling that they can feel a little bit of compassion for themselves in this relationship and a little bit of compassion for their partner.
Mm-hmm.
And then the medium partner sitting in yab yum, breathing together. And there are 100 practices that I have. Someone asked me recently, "Do you ever run out of practices?" No. So what can it do for relationships? At any stage, It can either crack you open, it can bring you a realization. So let's say the middle one is like, oh, I actually need to be validated here. We're good, but I feel like I could go a little bit deeper. It's like a recipe. I feel like curry would add a little zing here. When you're in these tantric practices and you're softening with the breath, the realization of what you need becomes clear, and you feel safe to ask for it.
And I have to say, I used those exact words with my partner this morning, and it came so naturally to me, partially because I know, yeah, what I deserve clearly. And also it makes you not settle at all when you know what you deserve and when you put yourself and your satisfaction and joy first. It will come that easily.
Yeah.
Also,
And why don't we do this?
trust, which I have to say, Tantra helps with that a lot as far as the trust goes, because this person is essentially or literally a safe place because you've created that together.
And I am literally a safe place. I am so deeply rooted and accepting in all of my pieces that I know that no rejection. Janice, I do not want to be rejected. But when I am so deeply rooted in loving all of the pieces of myself, if somebody else rejects me, I know that I will be okay. And so the safety and belonging comes first and foremost from me.
That's wonderful differentiation. What about the third couple here? What is going to happen with them?
I feel like the third couple is you. Let's say for the third couple that they're already like dynamically attracted, they feel connected. They're the couple everyone looks at and says like, God, what do they have? This is like, I can feel the palpable, visceral, sexual energy coming off of this couple, the love for them, right? Why would they bother with tantric practices? Is because there is no limit. There is no limit.
Good way to put it.
To our experiential bliss. And why not blow the top off of the ceiling that we have been taught? Why not collaborate with another person who lights you on fire? Why not bring all the possibility and the curiosity for expansion that you could possibly have, right? Like, there is a tantric philosophy that we're talking about heterosexual connection here in sex, that the cock heals the vagina. So the penis will heal the vagina, that there is wounding and trauma from past inhabitants, from wounding, from hurt, from heartbreak, and that the penis actually has a healing force in there. And I strongly believe this. I have felt it myself. When it is a conscious penis, when that penis is conscious of, and this could be like two people who you do not have to be in a 20-year or a 1 day. This is just like, I am in touch with the divine in me and I see the divine in you. And there is this powerful healing process that can happen when two people are aware. And this is like, I don't know if anybody listening has ever had the experience where they have cried after really good sex.
Mm-hmm.
And what that is it's a purification process. Tantra talks about this path of liberating impurities from ourselves through practicing tantric sex. And it is so gorgeous and so beautiful. And it is not somebody throwing up their trauma onto you. It is trauma being released because of the beauty of this union, because of the healing power of this union. And so that's the third couple too, is that when you can surrender to these practices, this purification and this no limit, why wouldn't you want that?
Yeah, everyone out there, this could be the key to, this is the key to unlocking ecstasy with yourself and others.
Yeah.
I like what you said about the divine in me sees the divine in you, because the very first coupled practice in the book is the heart salutation, which is for listeners sitting across from each other, cross-legged, and bowing in recognition of each person's divine nature.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that our hearts being open is a key to ecstatic pleasure as well. And I think that's really hard. And I think that that's where work like yours, where you help heal heartbreak and things, can really make a difference. And that tantric practices of de-armoring that heart. I have felt so tenderly toward a partner that I had just, during sex, during lovemaking, I had put one hand on my heart and one hand on my partner's heart. And it just brought tears of relief to both of us. And it's just so beautiful to be connected to another human being like that.
It's a relief too. You potentially will see things really melt away.
Yeah.
Gina, I know you wanted to talk about the Kundalini awakening. We're going to take a short commercial break and then we're going to dive into that.
I am passionate about the opportunity that a breakup gives us for a fresh start, but it can sure be hard to see that when you're heartbroken, right? I have worked with people all around the world to beat their breakups with my own 3-part process. I've created an ebook that guides readers through each step using practical advice straight from an experienced breakup coach. Click on the link at the top of the show notes and get your copy of the Broken Heart Repair Kit, the 3-step method for beating your breakup, at my special Sex and the Solo Girl release price of just $24.99. And remember, you've got this.
Thank you to everybody for listening to the short commercial talking about my new ebook, Kundalini Awakening. This is going to possibly be foreign to a lot of people. Personally, I've been in these circles for ages and definitely heard a lot of people talking about it, but maybe haven't experienced it. And I'm not very familiar with even what it means. So let's do it.
Yeah, thank you for that. And thank you for my invitation too, because I think that this is something that is what made me a believer, if you will.
Okay.
Like that, I will just tell you briefly that I was brought up in a Christian household, and then I spent my 20s and 30s and the beginning of my 40s. So I spent a good many decades identifying as an atheist. And my brain said I was an atheist. And then I started to think, okay, like maybe it's just religion that I'm not keen on. Maybe
so many people go so fast into identifying as an atheist. I would say most of my ex-Mormon friends would identify that way. Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Right. And I do think that this is a little bit like, if we were to equate it to heartbreak, that was me armoring myself.
Oh, that's a good point.
Because it didn't serve me before. And so now I'm like, I don't need that. That is nonsense. My intellectual academic brain understands it differently, and I limited myself.
Yeah.
So when I started to practice Tantra, I got deep into breath work, and the breath work practices cracked me open a lot, released a lot of trauma for me. I had a beautiful lover. I had been sick. I had cancer and got divorced within 1 year.
Oh, wow.
And it was a 20-year marriage.
Oh.
And so I had this beautiful lover, but still in this raw, who am I? What happened? What just happened to my entire life, right? Like this whole sort of feeling of who am I, type of situation. So he was a lawyer. He was also a non-believer, did not believe, Jewish, was not Jewish by faith, but like had also had a lot of these oppressive thoughts and had come out of those, right? So my Kundalini awakening came from this Tantra building in me a sense of safety, breath work, inviting in me a sense of releasing some traumas in my life, and then this sexual energy that I felt with this person who I did not shield myself against because I didn't have the energy. I was already like, okay, like near death, and I had this feeling of like something weird was happening in my body. Sex was always very pleasurable with this person. I was already deep into the tantric practices. He was very open in this. And we were having this really sensational lovemaking practice. And I started to feel this energy like in my fingers and in my toes, and this like weird movement in my body that I wasn't making happen. Like a lot of things in Tantra with movement ask you to flow and do some intentional movements. But this Kundalini awakening happened in me where I felt this energy moving through my body. And it was like I could smell things that it was like the sweetest smells and this feeling and this energetic building and release that was fantastic. It was just this most unbelievable and you can have a Kundalini activation.
What is Kundalini? I should have started with that.
Oh, that's okay. So Kundalini is just this energy. So when we talk about Kundalini activation or Kundalini energy, it's usually this energy that has been kept, stored, or released. It's just the name of this energy that is life force energy. And so this life force energy is this Kundalini energy. And it's just this, the tantric, the Sanskrit name for this energy that you can feel. And so a lot of people talk about it as an awakening because we have usually suppressed this ability to feel the Kundalini energy within us. What it did for me could be different for everyone.
How can people access this? Because I am sure I'm sure it's turning a few people on, myself included. So can you intentionally work toward a Kundalini awakening?
So the Kundalini awakening, how do you invite it? You practice a sense of safety. You practice connecting with your physical self. I think it's a different path for everyone. I do think that it happens a lot during sex.
Okay.
And I think part of that is because sexual energy is this life force energy. It can also happen during meditation, during active meditations, during breath work. And so it's really like Kundalini energy and activation can be invited by anyone by using the body, by tapping into the energy of the body. And it can be used by practices that are under the umbrella of Tantra. So yoga, breathwork, meditation, mindfulness, these type of things. And so you can invite it through there. It's usually, if you have suppressed or repressed energies, usually just takes a little while for this softening and for this awakening. It feels like a blooming, like a flower doesn't immediately go from a bud to a full blossom, just like Kundalini energy usually doesn't happen like that. But I have known it in other people to happen as closed. And now all of a sudden, wow,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. And it's really the first time, Janice, where the reason I started that story on my Kundalini awakening with being an atheist is because I said to this lover, I think I believe in God. And he was very open about the possibility of that. And he was really like, tell me what that feels like. Explain it to me. And it felt like self-acceptance.
And a lot of practitioners do believe in, yeah, more than necessarily a higher power, but yes, a God-like presence in life, myself included. I kind of went through an atheist phase when I left the Mormon church. And this is a very inclusive show. If that's how you identify, I honor that. But I just feel like it that's impossible. That is not a reality or a possibility for me, that there isn't a God.
Yeah.
So you're
Yeah.
saying that Kundalini can be intentionally sought after. Kundalini awakening.
Yes, in that the same way that orgasm can be intentionally sought after by not focusing on orgasm, but on focusing on the sensuality and the points of contact and the being in the here and now and the presence and the physical sensations. So can Kundalini activation be sought after by not making it the object or the,
Okay.
yeah, the point.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah.
This is a really good segue into kind of the last thing we're going to talk about, but I like to give as much practical insight and advice on this show as I can. Where do either individuals or couples begin? And maybe these can be two different parts. So if this is really resonating with you, where do you think some starting points would be?
I suppose depending on where you live. So I live in Portland, Oregon, and there are a lot of places you could go, workshops that you could attend.
There's a lot. Yeah, look into that first. Even here in Denver, I think we've had two come through. I haven't done them, but yes, there are actual instructionary experiences that you can have. And I've been to a weekend-long Tantra retreat before, and it was, yeah, revelatory.
Yeah, but if you're talking about beginning, I would say, a few hours or a little dabbling in. I think anyone who wants to learn sex magic or breath work or things can reach out to me, can listen to podcast. Layla Martin, who is my mentor and teacher, has a This Tantric Life podcast.
I did an episode on sex magic, everybody. So go down in the feed a little bit. It was a month or two ago, but I did provide an intro to that in an episode.
Yeah. And I think that is like a really fun way to start is sex magic, because people very often can feel this in just one go around. They can feel that cycled energy. And anybody who's having trouble with affirmations or visualizations, if you do this cycled energy, and you can reach out to me. I actually have a recording of sex magic, or
yeah, everyone do that. Reach out to Gina if this resonates with you. Sex magic can be really fun and powerful. And if it seems out of reach to you, yes, please, please, please get in touch with Gina to get started.
Yeah, I already have a recording of that. And I actually have two versions of that. And one is without the turn on. And that's just the microcosmic orbit, right? It's the cycling of energy. And the other is like ramped up with the pleasure turn on. And the reason that sex magic works is just, this is neuroscience, is that things will imprint in your brain faster, stronger, easier when you feel pleasure. And so, so sex magic is a good intro to Tantra. Taking a little course, listening to a podcast, listening to your own body, feeling into, if you do look for books that describe Tantra, look for ones that have practices and
this is all practices. Yeah. I think. And again, the art of sexual ecstasy, I've been numbering them as I go, and there's 20 actual practices that you can do so far in the 6 years I've read. with yourself and others. So yes,
Yeah.
as far as practical application, look for that.
Look for ones that are not an academic or an intellectual study, because Tantra needs to be experiential. And so, like, my guidebook, I love yours, and I have not read that one, but mine is Tantra Illuminated by Wallace. So
Yeah.
Christopher E. Wallace wrote Tantra Illuminated, also an expansive text. And
All you have to do is go and click in the show notes, everybody, to go straight to Amazon and buy this stuff.
yeah, and so anything that gives you a little sampling, a little bit of acceptance in Tantra, is a way to start, I think. So yeah, and if you do not want to call it Tantra at all, just have this, like emotions through the tantric lens just mean that we observe and accept. And so that is the truth of it. Like, people who are numb are usually people who tell ourselves, I'm not angry, I'm not sad, I am positive, I'm a positive person, right? And we're really
I'm fine.
I'm fine. Yeah, exactly. I'm fine. And so really the first taste on the tip of your tongue with Tantra could be looking at your emotions through this lens of, how do I really feel?
Yes, I will say owning your emotions. It's your responsibility to work through them. But yes, recognizing that. And always, one of, I think, core practices, and also something that you really need, is to know how you feel in your body and to recognize body sensations. So something I work sometimes with clients on, depending on how maybe open they are to this type of thing, is asking, how does that emotion feel in your body, or what bodily sensation are you feeling right now? So stopping and recognizing that and maybe speaking it out loud is something that will help you get into a potentially tantric state over time.
Yeah, that's the beginning of it. The lens of tantric is, yeah,
Feeling
yeah,
safe and comfortable in your body. I
yeah.
guess
And
I'll give two more tips. One of the first things in the book is just simply meditation and just learning how to meditate, because when you reach a meditative state, you're in the moment purely. And so being able to get to that point is something I would encourage people to do.
and if you just allow me to say one thing about this tip that you just gave,
Yes,
is
I was
that,
actually hoping you would.
yeah, is that in meditation, do not, this is where we practice loving acceptance. This is where we practice Tantra as the truth, is that my mind is racing. And people misunderstand meditation
Thank
as,
you. Yes, this is true.
you have to be in this state of white sheet of paper, no thoughts, right? I don't know any gurus. Pema Chodron talks about this all the time, that the truth of meditation is whatever actually happened in that sit. And so if your mind raced, you don't say, like, oh, I feel so good, I meditated and I was able to get out of my head. If that is not the truth, that is not the practice. That is not doing you any good. And so really, meditation is about, your mind wanders and it comes back with loving acceptance. Wandering mind. And you come back time after time. It is the best way to practice self-love, is that over and over and over again in that 20 minutes, you are saying, wandering mind, no judgment, no nothing, just, here we go, trying it again. That's meditation.
And definitely start small. I know for a fact, because I've encouraged friends and clients to do this. If 20 minutes seems confronting to you, start with 5. Get to really enjoy that 5 minutes, work your way up. I use the Insight timer, and that is something that I really, really, really recommend to people. It helps you. It has various programs for free, everyone, to help you get started. It has lessons and teachings. It has guided meditations. And of course, it has a timer. And I know for a lot of people, it may seem uncomfortable, or, like I keep on saying, oh, maybe intimidating to just sit down and wonder how long it's been, or just sit down generally. So if you have the timer, I do think that that helps. It helps you get out of your head even more, because you won't be thinking about how long you're doing it, which I think does matter to a lot of people.
Yeah. And I think that the timer, it's funny that this is the first time time has come up when we're talking about Tantra, right? When everybody thinks that tantric sex is like 6-hour sexual experience or something. But I do think in meditation, when you have a timer, it's not that you need to do it for that timer. It's that you don't have to worry about the time. You're setting a safe container so that your mind can be freer in that time. That's something that you can take off of your mind. That's all. So I do understand what you're saying about the timer. Yeah.
Thank you. Is there, I guess, as a almost final point, is there anything that you want to say about breath work?
Do it.
And again, Insight Timer has a bunch of breath work tools and instructions and guided meditations. And by the way, everyone, I am actually an Insight Timer teacher, and go and possibly look me up. Please follow me. I've got various meditation affirmation tracks for different stages of breakups, people pleasing, jealousy. I just published one that's just affirmations for dating. So please, I'd appreciate if people go over there, because I love it. And it just makes me feel good when people follow me. I've got some really good reviews lately, so I'm kind of vibing because of that. I've gotten a bunch just this week. So
yeah, I did not know that. I'm so glad that you mentioned that, because I did not know that. And so I am definitely going to check those out. I love that.
Thank you. I really, really love doing it. I wanted to be an Insight Timer teacher for such a long time. And then I started this year, and it was, kind of, like I said, a goal of mine. And so it feels really good to be doing it and to getting good feedback. Okay, anyways, enough about me. Let's kind of tie a bow around this. I think that we have a few more topics that we can go into. I wanted this podcast to be heavily focused on sex positivity and various spiritual sexual practices, and also just making sex better and more accessible for people. So let's keep this going. What do you want to leave my listeners with?
It's okay to be curious about what works for you. Everything is normal. And Tantra is this container of acceptance and an invitation to follow the truth of who you really are. So it is a path to your authentic self. And things like breath work and things like these tantric practices might seem like, to a lot of us in Western culture, how is that going to change 10 years of toxic behavior?
Yeah.
But it does. It genuinely does.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Thank you for sharing all your wisdom and experience with us. Thank you to everyone who listened. If you loved it, let me know on Apple Podcasts. If you didn't love it, I don't need to know. Okay, I'll see everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to Sex and the Solo Girl with Janice Formicella, the podcast for those who want to add more flavor to their relationships with themselves and others. If you liked today's episode, make sure to head over to Instagram and let her know. See you next week.